Hello everyone, it's Sofia Smallstorm back again with a podcast for you today. This is late October and it's as warm as can be here in Southern California. I'm going to be talking today to an old friend of mine, David Dees. He is the very hilarious and brilliant political artist. You've seen his, I call them drawings, but they're really not that. They're all over the internet. He was a big draw to the Jeff Rentz website for many years, and now he is more nomadic. So, David, welcome to my podcast.
Hello, Your Excellency.
Oh, gosh. What does that mean?
I'm not sure, but I'm thrilled to be here, and I'm a big fan of yours. I love the presentations you've been doing the last few years, and wow. I appreciate all those things you said. Yeah, I've been doing illustrations my whole life. How old am I? I can't remember, but it was only 2006 I did my first political illustration. And so now it's been, 9 years? 9 years I've been doing these. I've done nearly 600. And what I do is I just use Photoshop and throw together some images and try to kind of outline some point I'm trying to make about some condition or poisonous activity that the elite, neurotic, frightening people that are controlling the planet are inflicting upon us. So that's kind of what I do. I design book covers, but I don't get paid to do the political art, but so I just make it available for people to use to try to wake other people up.
Yeah, David is very generous in that regard. His very witty and extremely original pictures, P-I-C-K-C-H-A-S, they can go on almost anything. I've always envisioned things like mugs and T-shirts and lunch mats, David. Can you imagine laminating them and having a set of lunch mats?
Yeah, there's not many products that I haven't really gone the way of merchandising with the art. I mostly just make them into files, JPEGs, and they get passed around the internet and used in a lot of videos. I do see a few people have asked me to make T-shirts and stuff, but it's not something that really I want to put my attention on. I just like doing the art. But boy, if I was business minded, I surely could probably make some money with these.
Yeah, no, definitely. So, David, let's start. Instead of asking you who you are politically, obviously you're very aware because your pictures come out within almost like moments of some new thing arriving on the alternative news scene. And you're very ingenious in terms of the content. I mean, sometimes you have to sit and look at those pictures and say, what? How does he come up with this? And you end up just marveling at the mind it must take. So I'm going to ask you from a more nuts and bolts perspective, how you actually do this Photoshop. I know you once told me that it took you like an hour to find a certain picture, a photo of so-and-so, so that the expression fit. Can you tell us a little more?
Alrighty. I work all digitally now, but in the beginning, back in the early 80s, I was working out of art school. I was I went to a Art Institute of Atlanta and studied commercial illustration, and came out after a couple of years and went into a sort of a high-end studio that were doing advertising illustrations for the ad agencies in New York and Chicago. So, I worked there 3 years, and it was a very fast-paced, chaotic sort of an atmosphere where, we had to come up with a lot of images that were used in magazines and newspaper ads. So what you're looking at is sort of, I guess, my grounding or my study of how to take a basic concept and sell it to you really fast, because that's what you have to do with a billboard. You have to come up with an image that is interesting, that will grab your attention, and then, you only have a second to convey everything. And politics and these things that are happening on the planet are really complicated. They can be very complicated. So I try to boil it down into, just a few basic elements, throw in a lot of symbolism, tie it together with, color, and some of it's pretty horrific, I guess. Some of the recent pieces I did about Syria, some of the war is hard to look at. But, I can actually package, I can take a war scene that is, most people would not be able to confront, and give it a twist, give it an angle that makes it much more easy to confront, and people will tend to look at it more. For instance, I kept coming across the children in Iraq that had been born mutated, birth defects from the radiation, from the radioactive weapons they're using, and their faces are just barely even human. Well, I did a piece on Halloween where the person from the viewpoint of the viewer, you're opening up the door to see trick-or-treaters, and the trick-or-treaters, their actual faces are of these mutant birth defected children, but they're in costume. So, people really like that piece, but what they don't realize, I guess, maybe they do, is that they're looking at the faces of some of the most horrible things you could never confront. So I packaged it in a way that makes it sort of entertaining, but it gets the point across about the birth defects caused by radiation weapons, which is beyond nightmarish. I mean, you got to really appreciate the level of evil it takes to bomb people with radiation. So,
well, I'll say this, that in these compositions you create, I am absolutely sure there is a very deep imprint on the subconscious of everyone who spends any time looking at them. So whether those people appreciate that you have depicted the faces of the, deformity-stricken Iraqi children, whether they consciously appreciate it or not, it is sinking in. And so you're influencing all the time, just the way that the television influences us. And I noticed that your drawings have the same very vibrant colors. They're sometimes even like lurid. They're very, very pronounced in the tonality of the colors. A lot of primary colors, a lot of very popping tones, hues rather. And they just blast their way into your brain. One of the ones that I loved the most, I don't know if loved is the right word, but was the Larry Silverstein cockroach.
Really? Oh, yeah? Yeah.
Do you remember that?
Yeah, I put Larry Silverstein, you know who that is. That's the guy who owned the towers. And yeah, I put his head on a cockroach. Boy, that was a really old one. That was right at the beginning when I started.
Right, and that was when I got introduced to you. So I've never forgotten that one. Somebody called me and said, you have to see this. And I did, and I laughed, I guess, but it stayed with me for all these years.
I know what it was. Now I remember. It was his head on a cockroach, but there was all these hands with flashlights that were shining lights on it. That's what it was. Yeah.
But see, that's the brilliance. That's the very clever twist. Because what you're really doing is you are talking about exposing this person, and you're casting him in the role of a cockroach at the same time. So there's so much going on, and I don't even know if you spend the time analyzing it and you build the idea, the theme in those layers. I'm sure you don't. I'm sure your mind is always whipping around and whipping along, in the background, and you start. How do you get inspired? You just say, I'm going to make a picture of blah, 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 or how do you do that?
Lots of inspiration, but it's sometimes the hours it takes to create these. I consider that, and then I just dismiss it. I mean, every day I would have dozens of ideas. I mean, on any subject. I mean, I worked in a studio where we were forced to come up with ideas and do art direction just within minutes. So I can, on any subject, I've learned how to do that. But the best ideas I've ever had have never been created because it would take too long, or I don't have the drive to do it as much as I used to. I mean, the first 5 years, I was really cranking them out. I mean, the amount of art that I did, a lot of them were experiments. They were kind of half baked. I've kind of evolved into a look that people recognize now, and it takes about it can take anywhere from 4 to 20 hours for a piece. So for an idea to come in, I have to consider how effective is it going to be? Is this going to really help people? Because I was sitting today trying to figure out, because I need to do a new piece, and here's what I was thinking. I was thinking the first idea I had was about chemtrails, and there's talk about the elephant in the room, and I wanted to do chemtrails being the elephant in the room, but the elephant would be this monstrous. How when you see Godzilla in the distance, and he'd be just kind of, he would be kind of in the distance with a faded, foggy, outline of him. You wouldn't see a lot of detail. Well, I would have an elephant so massive that he would be in the distance, but the people in the city are just walking by, ignoring him, But behind him, of course, would be a sky just completely covered in chemtrails. And then maybe I would have a guy in the foreground reading a paper, and some of the text would say the elephant in the room, just to give you the idea of what you're looking at. And then the viewer would think, what's the elephant in the room? Maybe they would just be so used to looking at chemtrails, they wouldn't even figure out what it was, So I had that idea today.
Well, David, if you start a piece and okay, you'll start somewhere, maybe you will start with one thing, and then you have to find these different people and characters to build into it. So you get people with all the right expressions. You get Obama, for instance, or Hillary Clinton. Not only do they have the expression that fits the picture, but they have the body position that fits the scene you've put them in. So how do you find that?
It's always the hard part, because I rarely ever shoot a model. I always find it easier to just search through hundreds or thousands of photographs on Google Images. The trick is into knowing what to type in that you get the right, imagery. But some of this art, you have to. You might get the body right, and then you got to find the head in the right, on the right. Not only the right angle, but the right lighting to fit the scene, and then you got to get the hands, and it's a real pain.
No, I mean, when you use, let's just take Hillary Clinton, you have to be using her body and her head, right?
No.
Really? So you just put her on, because she has distinctive, for instance, her calves. She has Hillary Clinton calves.
Yeah.
So you have to know those things,
She's got, what do they call those?
Battle axe.
No, she's got cankles, which is calves and ankles that are kind of merged into one. But I haven't done much. The only thing I've done on Hillary recently was Hillary and Donald Trump. You remember the scene from The Shining where the twins were in the hallway of the hotel, and I put Donald Trump's head and Hillary's head on the twins. And
so that wasn't as hard.
No, it wasn't hard, but it was very effective. It was very effective because I made their dresses with Star of David's, so.
Well, you get every detail. That's the thing. You get these details down, and you have the positioning, and as you said, the lighting, the folds in the clothing. So, do you actually massage or tweak or blur or blend when you do the Photoshop? Are you actually changing the image that you start with considerably?
Yeah, I'll paint. It's easy to do. You have to marry together images in a way with lighting and shading, and it's just done with Photoshop, airbrushing, and you might maybe you could go to my site and pull up an image and we can look at it. I could tell you easier if I was looking at a particular piece. I think you were talking earlier about you wanted to ask me about the robot serving the obese people.
Yeah, we could go there. That's fine. All right, so that's on my blog right now. So if you type in, I'm going to go to my blog, which is accessible with sofiasmallstorm.com as the URL. So I'm going there.
Yeah.
And we're going to go to the dinner picture. Frightening. All right, so there we are. You sent it to me on October 17th, and you called it Dinner.
Yeah. This is a very new one. I just did this a week ago or a couple of weeks ago. And it came about because I came across a video of this Asimo robot in Japan. They designed it, and now they got it where it walks out in front of a whole audience, and it's about 4.5 feet tall, and it'll dance and it'll jump on one foot, and it's a humanoid, has hands and arms and legs, and it will talk. It can recognize different voices, and it will answer. They had one demonstration where 3 people were talking to him at once, and it recognized everything everyone said and took each question and answered back to the person that asked it. So it's we're looking at some pretty high technology. But my thought was, all right, how are we going to apply this? And I thought, well, it would be a good, I think what they're going for, other than military applications, is going to be in the house. Sort of like in the Jetsons. Remember the Jetsons had that robot that was bringing them dinner all the time. So I have been bringing dinner to some Americans that are sitting on the couch, and they're about 500 pounds each, and they're obviously not going to be moving from there. And they got the robot bringing them food. It's a pretty sad, sick piece, but it's funny because it's a little bit too true, I suppose.
No, it's great. So I actually posted the Honda Asimo robot video lower down on my blog because David sent it to me, and I thought it was very remarkable. I mean, the day will come when the average American family will say, oh, yeah, we have a Honda Civic and a Honda Asimo.
I know.
Or Asimo. Anyway, so yeah, this robot is quite, let's just call it talented. And we've got the family seated on a couch. It's almost like an L-shaped couch. We've got Dad, who is really tremendous in girth.
Yeah, that guy's about 600 pounds.
And then we've got the 2 teenage louts one's got the remote in his hand. So they're lying down. They're pretty much, reclined because they've just eaten. And they have the look of, sated stomachs. One's got his hands clasped on his middle. He's the younger, I would imagine, the little rosy-faced cherub. So where did you get those guys?
Oh, stock photography. They have. I don't know. The little boy, not little boy. He's huge, but he's a younger boy. He's from a stock photo, and then the second guy I forget. But the guy in the middle is a famous kind of a massive guy who eventually lost a lot of weight. And there's a photograph of him. It's 600 pounds, and then at 200 pounds, and so the skin was pretty frightening. It was all just hanging off of him. But his head didn't work. So this is a different head of a different obese guy I dropped on there. And actually the image was low resolution, but I needed high resolution. So I found a high resolution head, and then I put the American flag on his chest. So, because that's high resolution, and then you don't really notice that this T-shirt itself is low resolution. So, it's it's 1, 2, 3, three pieces built that one person. So, it's a good.
Yeah, but a lot of analysis and hunting, and some of this is just your knowledge. You've done this long enough.
Yeah.
So, but like that kid with the remote, the teen that is behind a little cherub there. Yeah. His hand, with the light on it, and the light fits the rest of the light, it seems.
Yeah, well, the remote is I dropped that in. He didn't have a remote in his hand.
So are these the real people, even though you get them from stock photography, are they real people? Is there a license that allows you to just stick them in your pictures?
Yeah. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, when you buy a stock photo, they're real cheap. They're, it can be $2, can be $10. I rarely spend more than $30 on a stock photo.
$3?
$30.
30. So when you've made one of these assemblies, how much do you think you've spent in stock photography?
Rarely more than 50.
So it's costing you money as well as time to do this.
Yeah, they cost me sometimes. But, I only buy it if I really have to find one that I really have to use. That, I've already been looking and I can't find it any other way. I will definitely pay. If I'm excited about a piece, because the piece will eventually go in one of my books, so it's worth it.
Wow! So you have got yourself out there doing book covers. You are an illustrator. Do you want to tell us anything about your professional life, like some of the things you've worked on, or because I know that you were like in that Hollywood community for a while, right?
Yeah. Well, early on, I was in advertising, like I said, and I was working with, I didn't even know when I was working in that studio. I didn't even realize at the time how big of ad agencies I was working for. I was just I was a part of a staff of 8 illustrators, which was, they don't have that anymore. Now everybody's freelance. But at that time, it was a stable of illustrators, and we were just like a short order cook that was, filling orders as they came in. And, it was McCann Erickson, J. Walter Thompson. These are, I don't know all the big ad agencies now, but these were the top ad agencies in the whole world. And we were regularly working for them. And seeing, billboards, we're doing billboards and store displays for, McDonald's and any of the Chick-fil-A, any of the biggest corporations. It was all highly corporate. I was illustrating all sorts of electronics and cars and anything you can imagine.
It was commercial art in the deepest sense. And were you awake or averse to that in any way, or you just were young, you had to make a living, you had to start somewhere?
Oh, I was really happy to be there. I mean, I really wanted to be there. I thought this was the greatest thing ever, to pick up a Time magazine and see my art in it. I couldn't imagine anything better at that time. But my attention, after a few years after that, I did get a little bored with it, and my attention started to go more towards entertainment. And I started collecting ads that I found in the newspaper of movies. I had a whole file every Friday when they would put all the ads of the new movies in the newspaper. I would cut each one out, and I had a whole collection because I love that art, And then finally it just occurred to me, why don't I just go to L.A. and get into all that? So I did. I just packed up and drove to L.A. and it turns out that I knew a guy from Atlanta that had gone out, and he was about 4 years ahead of me. So he was a well-established illustrator and had a big, high-powered agent. And I started working with him, and immediately I was working, doing movie entertainment stuff. And didn't last too long there because I was ready to be freelance. And then his agent took me on, and she introduced me to Paramount. Right off the bat, and so Paramount became my new big client, and I was working with Paramount for about 10 years, and worked on every movie that came out. It seemed. I mean, I was doing Beverly Hills Cop 2 and Tales from the Dark Side and Friday the 13th Part 5.
So what exactly were you doing? You were illustrating?
No, well, what I was doing was I was taking a lot of times the promotions of the movie posters were already done at that time, and so they needed to do the video, put it in VHS, and so my job was to figure out the store displays. So it would be a presentation, a takeoff on whatever they had going on the cover of the video. I would just expand on that, such as, I can't even think right now, I did so many, but if we did Flintstones, then I would do a whole scene of from the Flintstones with the rock and the textured rock and sort of use it and then paint the characters. And
so you were doing an adaptation,
yeah.
a thematic adaptation from the actual content and characters of the film to be then turned into a store display.
That's right. Well,
for merchandise.
Yeah.
Relating to the film.
And it was merchandising. And I did the Back to the Future. I was working on Back to the Future merchandising. Yeah, I was working with Universal on that. And I did one piece that they hired me to do, and I did it the best of my ability. And they took my piece and gave it to a higher-end illustrator that could illustrate better than me. And it really, when you look at the piece that was used to promote the movie, it's really my piece, but it's slicked up by another artist. And I really hated that I didn't get, I was so close to getting, a major piece out of that. But hey, I did the best I could. I mean, you can't really fake it if you don't know how to paint like these guys. They really have done it. They were really way ahead of me. But I can beat them now. I think I can beat them.
Well, sure. I mean, how old were you then when you first went to L.A.?
26.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I was pretty young. Yeah, I was a virgin.
And of course, you can't remember how old you are now, so that's fine.
I'm almost 60 now. I know.
Not really, not quite.
58. I'm 58.
So that's a pretty full life then, David. I know for a while you lived overseas.
Yeah, I moved to Sweden in 2003, and I ended up living there for 9 years, and they kicked me out. But I was up to become permanent resident, and they said, well, you don't make enough money to live here, so we're just going to kick you out. But we'll give you a free lawyer if you want to contest it. So since I was planning on stay there the rest of my life, I said, okay, and I ended up staying another year. But, I wanted to get back to some sunshine and some good food and some good music because while it's a really interesting place, and let me tell you, when I moved there, I really was fascinated. I was living right in the heart of Sweden in a place called Jönköping. It's a small town, 80,000 people, really in the heart of Scandinavia. And you don't get tourists through there. So I was in a very exotic land, and they were fascinated by me. They couldn't figure out why would you move here, after living in L.A. Why would you move here? So they even did an article about me in the newspaper that everybody read, and they were really shocked at all the things. And
did you ever explain to them why you moved there?
I did, and they printed it in the newspaper, and people were fascinated and also alarmed at what a strange person I am.
Well, it's surprising that the Swedes would decide that you didn't make enough money to live there and ask you to move out when there's this enormous, influx of refugees who don't make any money at all.
I know. I think it was more about the politics. I was doing these illustrations that were bringing a lot of attention to Sweden because when I did interviews, I always talk about living there. And I was doing things where they were putting people in prison for already. You can't talk about the Holocaust, the so-called Holocaust there. And here I was illustrating, doing these little infographics and, exposing all the reasons why the gas chambers were a hoax. And, you can't even, if you did the same thing I was doing even 100 miles south in Germany, you go right to prison. That's illegal. You don't even get to talk about it. So here I was doing something, and so they were... I got on their radar, and they came after me and harassed me and came into my house and vandalized my things and followed me, and it was pretty scary. Yeah, it was pretty scary. I was pretty frightened. It's not a good feeling when you know people are after you.
Well, you were very politically incorrect there, and that's actually what you are. That's what your drawings are. They're all very politically incorrect. And what's interesting, I read the other day that political correctness is a form of mind control. It's the beginning of mind control. When you make people uncomfortable about hearing certain things, or you won't voice a certain opinion because it'll make people uncomfortable. So you are the unmind control artist.
It's true. You're right about it being mind control, and Swedes are notorious for, really going by the rules. I was amazed at how few police cars I ever saw. And it's mostly because the Swedes police themselves. They were raised in a system, an old socialist system where, their worst fear is that other people would criticize them. And so they really get in line. Here I came in just guns a-blazing. I just was way out of control. And I got in a lot of trouble for it there. No wonder they threw me out. And it's funny that I actually got a letter in the mail that said I had to leave the country. It's not very often you open a piece of mail that says you have to leave the country.
And which department was that from?
Oh, I don't know. The Zionist-controlled media department, I guess. I don't know.
Oh,
but
well.
There was a guy that when they started unlocking my door, and then I would change the lock, and the next day the door would be opened again. And the locksmith said, this is government work. There's no way you can duplicate these keys, which they were digital keys. They were metallic, but they had little indentions in them. And he said, there's no way to duplicate these. The only way that this door is being opened like this is the government. So I told
right. There were the do not duplicate keys. Those are cut on two angles. Like there are certain brands like Schlager and Medico.
Yeah.
They make those super security keys, and you can only duplicate them if you've signed a paper at a locksmith and you go and request to have a duplicate key made. But yeah, you can't go to the corner kiosk that cuts keys.
No.
Yeah.
No.
So that's very alarming, I must say. And so now you've relocated to the good old United States.
Yeah, I'm back.
I'm back. Ready to kick ass.
Kicking ass and taking names. And back in the lands of obesity,
Oh, you mean the Swedes are not obese?
They weren't when I first moved there in 2003, but that's because there was no MSG in the food. I'm highly allergic to MSG, and so I was checking all the labels when I got there, and I was thrilled that there was no MSG in any of the food in the grocery store. So I started eating things that were more processed, packaged foods. Then suddenly a year later, and everybody was skinny, and I was amazed at how thin and gorgeous everybody was. Not only blonde, but just very. I really realize is that if people just are thin and in shape, it doesn't matter their face so much. I found everybody attractive. I thought that everybody looked good, but that all changed because a year later, MSG came in. And it came in all at once and went into every product, and aspartame came in also. And within months, I was sitting on the bus and I saw 3 teenagers get on that were way overweight. And I guess they just got fat and found each other. And it's so funny is that the really big people were kind of sticking together. And by the time I left in 2012, I saw huge people walking around. So it's MSG. Don't let anybody fool you because the media tries to tell you that it's people are not exercising or they're eating, sugar. That's not what it is. It's the chemicals that they're putting in the food that makes the food addictive, and it destroys your system and your, people. The body just really packs on the pounds, and when I came back, here's a funny story: is that when I came back, my folks live in Kentucky, And so I came into Kentucky, it was late at night. And I haven't been back to America in many, many years, and I'd been doing this political art. So they took me from the airport right to the hotel. And the next morning I got up and I went to the guy behind the counter there. I asked him about something, and I saw he was working on something on his computer. And I said, "Oh, you do art?" And he goes, "Yeah." I go, "I do art." And he goes, "Oh, really?" I go, "Yeah, go to my website and see some of the art I did." And he went and he looks up at me. He goes, "You're David Dees." And I go, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh, can I shake your hand? I just love your work." And so, my mother, who is not a fan of mine at all about the art and stuff, and she came to pick me up, and I said, "Will you please tell her what I do? Because she doesn't seem to understand." But I explained to her, I go, "Do you realize I came back to America and literally the first person I saw recognized me? What are the odds of that? That's just outrageous. So.
And what did she say?
She thinks that I am just if you put down George Bush, you're against America. That I'm un-American or that I'm, she doesn't know what to make of it. Her mind doesn't work this way, So I just don't talk to her, anymore. So.
Well, I can imagine that if she hasn't moved past George Bush, she's not going to understand what you're up to, and she's one of those people who probably doesn't see any chemtrails or.
No.
Worry about what's up there. But that's a pretty great story that the first person knew who you were. That's extremely unusual. And what are the odds? And I would say that's a sign from the universe for you. But I just want to get back to Sweden for a second, because from there I'm going to lead into another favorite topic of yours, which I think is actually health and your health, if you can tell us a little bit about that journey. But when I lived in Sweden, which was when I was a young teenager, I noticed that the Swedes ate an awful lot of packaged processed food. They had a particular kind of processed cheese that you squeezed out of a tube that was exactly like a toothpaste tube, and it had bits of shrimp in it, and you ate it on crackers.
Yeah.
And, everything was in jars, and there wasn't very much, produce in the winter.
No.
I don't think they had greenhouses, so they ate a lot of mashed potatoes and then this stuff called blood pudding, which was awful. And yet they seemed awfully happy and, content with the darkness descending at 4 o'clock and the deep snow you had to wade through on the way to the bus. But their summers, the Swedes really celebrated the summer months. They were out there topless and jumping into lakes, and they had the fresh vegetables then. And so it was a very interesting experience for me, but it was before you got there for sure. And I can't remember fat people either. So it's not the processed food necessarily as they tell us it is here. It is perhaps the chemicals. And I think you had a very serious chemical sensitivity for a long time when you were young, right?
I still do. What happened is that when I was spraying paint, with all these art studios, I got poisoned by my paint. It had cadmium in it, and it really wrecked my endocrine system. Yeah, so I still suffer from that. I can't. I'm highly chemical sensitive even today. I can't certainly smell any bleach, or I can't. MSG or this aspartame. It's pretty frightening stuff. Yeah.
Well, in fact, David, I was an art major in college, and our paint was named. They had cadmium red and phthalocyanine blue and phthalo green, and the chemicals were not. There was no concealment of these dreadful chemicals. It was part of the name of the paint.
Yeah, but
the color name.
Well, you know what? You say something interesting there. I didn't know. What is this? The thio? Because that was always the brightest blues and greens. What color is that? What chemical is that?
Phthalocyanine green, cyanide. It's I could Google it, but see, color pigmentation really does come from the earth, and I'm out of my depth here, but I do know that colors have been named and they're consistent through the ages as you use them. There are oil paints that bear the same names as the acrylic paints, and there's content that changes the shade and hue of the color. So when I took my color theory course, there was temperature, hue, shade, and value in colors. And hues are hues. Red is a different hue from blue, is a different hue from green. But then you have shades and tints in those hues. So shade would be adding black and making it darker. Tint would be taking a hue and adding white and making it lighter. And then you would get value. Value is a very interesting little experiment. If you were to translate a color picture into black and white, you would see the difference in values, because things would be gray, but they would be a darker gray or a lighter gray. So that's how you differentiated value. It's very difficult to explain. But then temperature is how warm or cold a color is. So you've got warm reds and cold reds, warm blues and cold blues. And that generally is where that whole cadmium and cyanide issue comes in, because the warmest colors are the colors with the poisonous names.
Well,
they have the highest temperature. So I'm just talking from color theory perspective that I remember from my college class, which I absolutely loved. It was the most interesting art class I ever took. But I could go to Google and start typing and probably come up with a little more. But yeah, I mean, pigmentation, so much of the elements from the periodic table taint everything. We need the trace elements in our body, but when you're using paint and it's a cadmium-based red and it's being sprayed, it's aerosolized, and you're breathing it in, it's bad enough to touch it. I mean, I had a mentor I was actually painting when I got out of college, and somebody mentored me and gave me a little studio and sold some of my work. But she would actually put colors on her hand, on the back of her hand, and she'd say, look at this red, see how warm it is, look at this red, see how cold it is, and she'd smear the colors into her skin. And that's how I learned to test color. I put it right on my skin. I never thought twice about it.
Right. I mean, I'm guilty of that too, and I used to, on Halloween, sometimes I would paint my face with acrylic. So, yeah. One time I was playing in a band, and I painted my arm with some acrylic, and when I got in the middle of the gig one night, this was in Hollywood, I completely forgot where we were in the song, and I started playing the wrong chords. And everybody looked, I completely destroyed a song. And I couldn't figure out what had happened. And of course the band was alarmed at me, and it took me a while to figure out it was that I painted my arm with some of this black acrylic, and I'd got poisoned by it. So anyway. Yeah.
Well, there you go. I mean, you might have had a very sort of like a teeter-totter thing going already, and you probably used a lot more of it because you were making your living doing that stuff. I was just dabbling.
I know. I sucked in a lot of pain. I'm lucky actually to be alive. I came close to completely destroying my health. Yeah, I was in terrible shape early, about 1990, 91.
So you were constantly sick, I think you told me. You had a lot of flus and respiratory problems and probably brain fog, and and it got in the way of your livelihood? I mean, did you have to work less, or you just dragged yourself through it, or what?
Yeah, early on, I mean, between 90 and 93, there were some really, really tough times. I was down a lot. And then I would just get up and start painting, and I still didn't realize it was my paint. How sad is that? I mean, I was spraying and then still inhaling it. Didn't know why I was sick. But but here I am, and digital now. So it's all behind me, and now I'm much better digitally than I ever was. With
back then
with real paint.
Yeah. So David. Do you want to tell us about Rife technology a little bit?
Sure. Rife technology was developed back in the 30s by a scientist named Royal Rife, and he studied microscopes, how to build microscopes. He built a microscope that he could see magnified 50,000 times, which is outrageous, and he could look at bacteria alive under his microscope. So he started experimenting with electricity and found that at certain frequencies that each bacterium had its own frequency that it would explode at. So he invented sort of an electromedicine where a machine that if you just stood by it, it would beam this particular frequency in, and it would destroy cancer cells or any cells. And the greatest doctors that were all in America got together and had a whole dinner. There's a photograph of it. They had a dinner, and they named the meeting "The End of All Disease." Well, this got out to all the bankers and the people that were the big pharma and all the people with the big money and stuff, and all the doctors that supported him suddenly backed away because they realized that this guy has got to be stopped. He's threatening this massive medical industry with this technology, and he was pretty much shut down. And they first his lab burned down, and then all of his notes were disappeared, and he was ostracized from the community in a sense. Just like anybody that would come up, for instance, if they have a clean burning fuel, that's inexpensive, the guy's gonna end up committing suicide. But so the Rife technology was just lost for many years, and it's resurfaced. I guess some of the plans for these machines, and so now they. So I found Rife technology around '95, and that's what rebuilt my system and has kept me really going. Because my immune system got really destroyed by the paint, but once I had a Rife machine, I was able to, anything that came up, I could just knock it right down. Any infections. For instance, if I one time I inhaled some bleach, just about 3 or 4 breaths, and I got a severe lung infection, just a burning, horrible. That only antibiotics. You would rush to the emergency room and get antibiotics, but instead, I just got on the Rife machine and it stopped it within an hour. So it's and also one time or a couple of times I got cat bites from my cat. One time I was giving him a bath and I got a real deep cat bite on my wrist, and it started to swell, and I just smiled and said, got on the Rife machine and it stopped it. This was something you would have to get antibiotics for. So if you have a technology that is going to threaten Big Pharma and all their pharmaceutical drugs, it's highly suppressed. And Rife is on the internet. I'm actually a distributor. I'm such a fan of the machine. I sell them myself. So you can write to me and I can get you a machine.
So I will put a link to your website, and people can contact you through the website. And you sent a very informative email out that might actually be a post on your website, for all I know, that explained your journey through bad health and into Rife. So, David, if you use this Rife technology, do you have to know what frequencies to set it at, or are there guides to that, or that come with the machine? How does it work?
Yeah, it's all outlined. It's all pre-programmed. You can there's a manual. The GB4000 has 9,000 pre-programmed. So anything you can imagine, Lyme disease or in any of the cancers and stuff, is all in the book. It's yeah.
So that's now a staple of your health, using Rife technology.
Yeah, I haven't been to a medical doctor in over 22 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, somebody who's gone through the corridor that you've gone through and been not even knowing what was making you so sick for so long, that's a little bit horrifying, when you appreciate your own blindness, which isn't necessarily ignorance. Sometimes we don't put 2 and 2 together.
Well, the acrylic had written on the front of the tube, non-toxic. Perhaps it was just that particular color because, the cadmium, it turns out I looked at the, just force of habit. I was standing in the line at the art store, and, I was reading so many labels that I just happened to read the back of the paint that I was getting ready to buy, and it said contains cadmium. Do not airbrush this. It causes cancer in laboratory animals. And I went, that was when I first realized it was the paint that made me sick. I didn't know it was the paint. I really didn't. And that's when I was shocked and saddened that here I'd poisoned myself. But, you would think that if it causes cancer, it might be on the front in big letters.
Well, no. I mean, the cadmium family is reds, oranges, and yellows, and I know that you probably use a lot of those colors there.
Well, I always used cadmium because it was the brightest colors.
Right.
And I always used the phthalo blue and green because that was the brightest colors. So I was literally, all my paints were chosen from the intensity of them. I was painting commercially, so I wasn't painting landscapes where it needed to be muted tones. So I needed the brightest possible, I was doing cartooning and stuff, and so I literally I had a palette of poison.
Right. It says just here on Wikipedia, artist paints, when I looked up cadmium paints, brilliantly colored with good permanence and tinting power, cadmium yellow, cadmium orange, and cadmium red are familiar artist colors, as well as being frequently employed as architectural paints, since they can add life and vibrancy to renderings.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm getting another chair here. That chair was too squeaky.
Yeah, so it is. It's the red, orange, and yellow family, and they're very bright.
Yeah, it's the bright
cadmium colors.
It's so bright, it's almost fluorescent.
So I'll look up phthalo paints.
Yeah, and those are very candy. The phthalo blue and green were very candy colored and rather transparent. They were delicious. I mean, it was almost like a blueberry blue and
Yeah, so here I'm going to Wiki. Phthalocyanine is an intensely blue-green colored aromatic macroacrylic compound that is widely used in dyeing. Phthalocyanines form coordination complexes with most elements of the periodic table. These complexes are also intensely colored and are also used as dyes and pigments. So they have very low solubility in solvents like benzene. So, when they go into your body on inhalation, they're just going to travel.
Okay.
All right, now it's very technical and I don't really understand it. But yeah, phthalo blue and green, and then cadmium red, orange, and yellow. And that's 2/3 of the color spectrum.
Yeah.
That's all of it.
Because
you've got red and yellow and blue. That's it.
I know.
Yep.
I mean, I didn't stand a chance. Plus, I was smoking cigarettes at the time. Good Lord.
Uh-oh. Yeah, well, that's... How many years worth of that, could I ask?
Anyway.
All right, well, he had dodged that question.
What question?
So, I said how many years worth of smoking?
Oh, I didn't hear that.
Oh, yeah. I did ask it, but you don't have to say.
No, I don't mind saying. I smoked for 8 years. I picked it up in art school, and then I quit. I quit 8 years later. But yeah, and I haven't smoked since. I mean, it's horrible. I didn't like it, but it's a highly addictive.
Right.
Nicotine's very addictive. I recommend everybody, please, if you're smoking, please stop right now. It's absurd. It's absolutely absurd thing to do. It's just not okay.
So, David, can one use Rife to break bad habits like that?
Rife is really good. It kills bacteria. It wipes out fungus, parasites, And these are all things, I have my nutritionist, Dr. Huntley, which is an amazing lady. She said, people don't really die from old age. They die from an accumulation of parasites or bacteria or fungus that, pulls down the organs where they stop functioning. That's how you end up dying. And so what happens is that once, you spend hours on this Rife and it starts to clean out all these things, it's, really taking away the things that make people die of old age. I'm 58, but people think I'm in my 30s. So I think it's had an effect on me too. I certainly feel more comfortable talking to younger people. I see people even my age start to really slow down, and or their skin looks very dry, and some that are very grayish. But what's happened is that because I got poisoned, but the technology I found has turned everything around where I'm actually younger, far younger now than I ever would normally be. So
right. Well, that's the benefit of reversing the whole bioterrain. I was talking to you on email a couple of weeks ago, and I added to the list of what pulls us down is this degeneration of tissues and organ systems and bones, which are a tissue. So when we start losing energy on the cellular level, we get into disrepair, which starts the degeneration process. And that's when bacteria and certain, organisms that live all over our body get a better foothold. Mm-hmm. And so they will start taking the upper hand and using our body as their feeding ground. And so if we can keep their proliferation down through a technology like Rife, then our cells have more of a chance to reconvene and rebuild themselves, because they don't have now an enemy sitting there trying to get the better of them, along with the degeneration and what's called oxidation, oxidative stress. So we have so many challenges all around us. Even if you clean your house with regular household cleaners that you buy from the supermarket, and then you can smell them for hours and they're on your surfaces. And I mean, people don't realize what they're doing to themselves. They're just so ignorant. The Teflon pans, Dr. Mercola just did a piece on Teflon, and I've got to read it in detail. I mean, we have to throw our Teflon pots and pans out. We've got to stop using these cleaners, a little more elbow power, and, things like borax even, which you shouldn't take internally, and some people do, sodium borate. It's a great scrubber for your sinks and toilets and bathtubs, and it's a laundry brightener. And I have the Himalayan soap berries. I should send you some on my website. That's my newest find. They are absolutely adorable, kick-ass little botanical, natural brown nuts. And you put 6 of them in a little mesh bag, throw it in your laundry, run the cycle. You'll never use detergent again. And you come out with the softest clothes. They smell wonderful. And these are little fruits of the Sapindus mucorosii tree that grows wild in the foothills of the Himalayas. The ancients have used these to clean their clothes or whatever they wore for centuries.
Wow.
It's cheap, too.
Send me some of those.
Yeah, I will. And they also have an extract. If you take the Himalayan soap nuts and you put them in a pot of water and you boil, and reduce, you get what's called an extract. And it's a very slick solution. It has the surfactant in it. Surfactant is that slippery stuff. If you touch the inside of cactus, it has that. So surfactant is like a natural soap. But the beauty of surfactant is it doesn't require rinsing. Detergent needs to be rinsed. This is why you have a rinse cycle, sometimes 2 in your washing machine. And you could even throw your dirty clothes back into the washer with no detergent and watch them. If you have a front loader and you can see into it, they will form suds just because of the detergent residue that's left in them. So soap nuts leave no residue, and it's the residue of the detergent that makes your skin itch and makes you break out. Since I've been selling these, I've learned from a lot of people how sensitive they actually are to detergent. And yet soap nuts are so cheap. And you can reuse them. They do load after load after load. You can use the extract, dilute it, and clean your house. So, yeah, I will definitely send you some. And that's something, I just pushed a product. I hope you don't mind. But this is what I would like to do, is share with people the things that have solved issues for me, that I don't go and contaminate my body any more than I already have from smearing paint on my hand when I was in my 20s. So, okay. Yeah, no, there's so much. And if people want to know, my web store is avatarproducts.com, AVATAR. And David's website, I really want you to read that fantastic piece he wrote on Rife. It was really eye-opening, and I sent it to many, many people, and I hope you got some inquiries back. But the Rife machine is not really cheap, and I think you have a better deal on it also than what else is out there. Isn't that true?
Yeah, I sell it. The people who make it, they make it in America here, and they have a limit to how cheap I can sell it. I sell it as cheap as they let me. I had to sign a contract that they said you can't sell it any higher than this, and and any lower than this number. So, but I sell it as cheap as possible, and I'm sure that if they could let me sell it cheaper, I would. But because I just want people to get it and feel better.
Now, David, how big is a Rife machine?
It's just 9 inches across and about 3 or 4 inches tall.
That's it. So it's actually really small. It's portable, effectively, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, you could even share it with somebody if you had to. How many days a week do you use it?
Well, see, I did it about 4 days ago. I did it for 2 hours, and what I do is I have electrodes that, the EKG electrodes that they put on your skin. You can use those, and I just put them on my stomach, and then and I can work at the computer. So I just crank it up and use it while I'm working.
Now, do you have to tape those electrodes onto your skin?
They have a natural sticky substance on them.
Okay.
And then also you can use the hand cylinders. You can hold those, or you can they're foot pads. You can put your feet on them. But my feet are really sensitive, so I don't tend to do that too.
Right. The conductive grips. I think they're made of stainless steel, and then there are probably conductive pads you could use also.
Yeah.
So very interesting. So you're out there now, and you're building an alternate career. You're moving on to new websites with your early submission art that is picked up and reposted. And I think you're okay with people posting your art wherever they like, right? I mean, people have asked me, can I post this picture that you put up? And I've told them, yeah, he apparently wants you to.
Yeah. Yeah, it's to help people any way I can. It's for non-profit. I try to get people to, if they're going to use it for some other profit, I send me some money, but I tend to never get any money for it. I guess, but that's okay. I just like that people like it and it gets the word out. But also it wakes people up to the fact that I'm doing art and that I do book covers, so I do get jobs that way. So it's good.
So, I mean, you could do DVD covers, you could do anything, pretty much, that people want you to illustrate besides book covers, or are you limited to book covers?
Yeah, I've got a pretty wide range. I'm doing advertising and logos and book covers, and DVD covers, album covers, website banners, website headers. I have such a wide background in illustration that I've in cartooning and realism that I got so many bases covered. Anything visual, I can kind of figure it out. I just did. I just got hired to do 10 covers for martial arts manuals, and I did the first 3, and he was really happy with them. And I did I went to a local karate studio and photographed, the black belts. Posed them, and they showed me some of their moves, and then I took them out of that photograph and dropped them into, a very surreal scenery. Came out really, really good. So you can see that. You can see that on my website. It's called Dees.com. That's DDEES.com. And if you just go to the book cover gallery, and you'll see the martial arts covers in there. And also, I do a lot of health book covers. I do history book covers and financial themes. Everything. I mean, I've got a little bit of everything in there. Science fiction.
Well, that is very good. I'm just trying to bypass some stupid restart that my computer wants to do here. The different computer, not the one we're recording on. So let's see. There's book cover design, then the satire galleries. And where's the range of stuff? How do people know?
What do you mean?
On the website.
I don't know.
I mean, like, how do they know all the different things you can do? It just says book cover design gallery.
Yeah, go on there.
Okay. I see. So there's a huge collection of book covers. I know that you did Ty Bollinger's books too, right?
Just click on one and then hit the arrows on your keyboard and just flick through them. I mean, it goes really fast. Okay,
so I clicked on work with your doctor to diagnose and cure 27 ailments. Michael Farley and Ty M. Bollinger.
Then just use the arrows on your keyboard and go left or right.
Yeah, so they're all coming up. Yeah, very impressive. And now I don't want to do the interview. I just want to look at these.
Yeah, that's a really good website. I'm getting some pretty good hits on it. People like it a lot.
Wow. So, logo design, illustration, Rife machines, general free political commentary, cats.
So music, I do music too. So.
Yes, I know. I know about your serenades at the old folks' home.
That's right.
David is actually, he has a repertory of thousands of songs, and he knows all the words.
I do.
Yeah, you're actually a very active, creative type. And I'm still talking like a zombie and looking at this art. I better close it.
Oh, do you want me to sing to you?
David, sing a little song.
Oh, you want me to?
Why not?
Oh, let's see.
Are you going to play your guitar? I don't think anyone has had you do that on a show. I'm the first.
Wow. All right. Let's see all right, let me pull something up here. What should I do for you? Let me think. I'm going to play. I'm looking through a whole list of things here. What could I play? I was looking for a particular song. Do you have any ideas?
Jambalaya on the Bayou. Well, I'll just talk. I'll talk till you remember one of your many thousands of songs that I just told everyone you knew right off,
all right.
You know, the top of your head.
Let's do this one. Let's do this. Stars shining bright above you. Night breezes seem to whisper, I love you. Birds singing in a sycamore tree. Dream a little dream of me. Stars fading, but I linger on, dear. Still craving your kiss. I'm longing to linger till dawn, dear. Just saying this. Sweet dreams till sunbeams find you. Sweet dreams that leave our worries behind you. But in your dreams, whatever they be, dream a little dream of me. That should work, huh?
That was very enjoyable.
It was?
Yes.
Okay.
I don't think, like I said, I don't think anyone has recorded you on an interview.
That's true.
So this one is the only one so far, but I'm sure now everyone will have you on just to sing.
That's right.
So David, I want to thank you very much for your entertaining, edifying, highly explanatory interview with me, telling us all about who you are and how it is you came to do what you do and how you do it. So I'm hoping that people will inquire of you more about this Rife technology device that you have to share with them, and you'll get lots of orders for design work as well, because you deserve it, you know, and you've given up a highly lucrative career. You've vagabonded all over the place looking for a roost, and you found one. I think, can I tell people it's in the Pacific Northwest now, so we're at least in the same time zone?
Yeah, I live in Oregon. I live in the southern part of Oregon, right above California. It's a beautiful sunny valley. It doesn't really have the normal Oregon weather. It's sort of its own little microcosm of sunny valley, and there's 80 wineries right here in this little valley, so there's a lot of sunshine. And it's very picturesque. I like it here a lot.
Well, I'm very happy for you that you're in a place that doesn't have, you know, you haven't mentioned sky littered with chemtrails.
Oh yeah, lots of chemtrails, but no fluoride. They don't put fluoride in the water here in this town. There was a big fight over it, and they forced the water out. It's the fluoride out of the water. But they spray. The valley gets an unusual amount of wind that kind of comes through it. So when they do spray chemtrails here, they get mutated by the wind in very odd ways. And if you look me up on Facebook, I have an album of about 1,000 photographs of the chemtrails here and the odd shapes that they come up with here.
What valley are you in? What's the name?
The Rogue Valley.
Rogue? Okay.
Rogue. R-O-G-U-E. Rogue Valley.
Is that named after a river?
Rogue River.
Rogue River. Okay. Well, you're the rogue artist in Rogue Valley. And there should be a country song written about that, so perhaps I'll write it. And you can sing it. So thank you, David. Again, very enjoyable, kind of you to share your morning with me and then subsequently with what I hope will be thousands and thousands of listeners.
Okay. Very good. Thank you.
And I will definitely be talking again.
Yes.
So thank you for this, and keep on with the art. And I want some lunch mats.
Right. And you can find my art at dees.com if you're interested. And also, I have a book. It's 114 full-color illustrations. It's an art book with heavy paper and really bright colors. It's the best of the best of my political art. You can find that on my website at dees.com. David,
is that a coffee table book?
It is.
Okay, well, that is a book definitely worth getting then, because you never know, who's going to sit down, put his hands on your coffee table, or her hands, and grab David's book and start getting those impressions deep into their subconscious, which will hopefully compel them to cry out in astonishment at the wit and the ingenuity and the new take on all the news that they've been drinking in from the television.
Mm-hmm. Or at least cry out.
Yeah, that's what you want. We want to turn pages and heads. So once again, thank you, and until the next time.
Very good. Bye-bye, Sofia. See you next time.